Hey Reddit, I'm 29 and I thought my life had finally found some peace. I live with my boyfriend, Tyler, who's 31. We've been together for almost 4 years, and until recently, I really believed he was the one. We lived in a quiet neighborhood, rented a small house with a backyard, and had just started looking into adoption after some hard conversations about infertility. I thought we were solid until last Tuesday night. It was storming. One of those weird summer nights where the sky turns green and the thunder hits before you even see lightning. Tyler was out grabbing takeout, and I was home alone. I was curled up on the couch watching something dumb when someone knocked on the door. Not the usual doorbell ring, an actual knock. It was hard and desperate. I jumped up immediately. We don't usually get visitors, especially not in the middle of a storm. When I opened the door, I froze. There, standing on the porch soaking wet, was a woman I had never seen before, but somehow looked eerily familiar. Her hair was plastered to her face, her clothes torn in places, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. But what threw me wasn't how rough she looked, it was what she said the moment I asked if she was okay. She said, "Is Tyler here? I'm his sister." Now, here's the thing. Tyler's only sibling, a sister named Emily, died 8 years ago. At least, that's what he told me. He said it was a car accident. He never talked about her much, and I didn't press. The one time I asked to see a photo, he said he didn't have any because it was too painful. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? So imagine how fast my brain shut down when this woman, drenched, shaking, and calling herself Emily, stood in front of me like a ghost come to life. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't even speak. My first thought was, is this some sick prank? My second was, what if this is real? And then I noticed something else. The tattoo on her wrist. A tiny constellation. Tyler has the exact same one. He told me it was for his sister. The same stars. Same placement. I let her in. And that's when everything started unraveling. Emily, if that was really her, sat at the edge of our couch like she was afraid to touch anything. Her hands were trembling, not from the cold, I don't think, but from whatever she'd been through. I wrapped her in a blanket, gave her a glass of water, and just stared. She didn't speak right away. Just kept glancing at the door like she wasn't sure she should have come in. I didn't call Tyler right away. I didn't want to hear his voice over the phone, I needed to see his face when he saw her. 20 minutes later, the front door opened. Tyler walked in carrying 2 bags of Thai food, whistling. That sound, so normal, so routine, felt like a slap. He looked up and saw me, then his eyes landed on the woman sitting on our couch. He dropped both bags. The crash of styrofoam and sauce hitting the floor didn't even register to him. His entire body went still. I've never seen someone go pale so fast. His mouth opened slightly like he was going to say something, but no words came out. Emily just whispered, "Hi, Tyler." He didn't respond. Not with a word. Not even a nod. He just turned around and walked right back out into the storm. I swear, I stood there for a full minute, staring at the empty doorway like I couldn't believe what I'd just seen. Emily was crying silently. Not sobbing, not making a sound, just tears running down her face like she'd already expected this to happen. I picked up my phone, heart racing, and called Tyler. No answer. I called again. Then again. On the 4th try, it went straight to voicemail. That was when I realized he had turned off his phone. I sat down across from Emily and asked the question that had been clawing at my brain since she showed up. If you're really his sister, then where have you been for 8 years? She hesitated, like she was deciding whether to lie. Then she said something that made my stomach twist. I wasn't dead. I was hidden. There was no time to process that. Because seconds later, there was another knock at the door. And this time, it wasn't friendly. The knock was sharp. Rhythmic. Not panicked like Emily's, controlled, forceful. I looked at her, and her eyes widened. She went rigid, clutching the blanket tighter like she wanted to disappear into the couch. I didn't even ask who it could be. Something in her expression told me, she already knew. Against every instinct in my body, I went to the door and opened it a crack. A man stood there. Late 30s, maybe early 40s, in a rain-soaked black hoodie and jeans. Tall. Broad. There was something off about him, though. He didn't look angry. He looked calm. Too calm. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. He asked, "Is Emily here?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. Every nerve in my body was screaming, "Don't let him in." I started to say no, but he leaned forward a bit and said, "It's very important I speak with her. She's not safe." That's when I felt it, that gut punch realization that whatever this was, it was way, way deeper than I ever imagined. I turned back to the living room. Emily was gone. At first, I thought maybe she ran to the bathroom or another room. But she hadn't. A window in the kitchen was slightly open, the one over the sink. She'd slipped out in less than 30 seconds. I turned back to the man and told him she wasn't here. His smile didn't falter. He nodded slowly and said, "If she comes back, tell her Daniel says hello." Then he walked away like he had all the time in the world. I slammed the door and locked it, heart pounding. My mind was racing. Who was that man? Why did Emily run from him? And what did he mean, she's not safe? I didn't even realize I was crying until I saw my reflection in the hallway mirror. I looked wrecked. The food was still on the floor. My boyfriend was MIA. His supposedly dead sister had just jumped out a window. And now some guy named Daniel, who clearly wasn't a stranger to her, was looking for her like he was on some twisted mission. I tried calling Tyler again. Still nothing. That's when I decided to check his computer. He always left it on the desk in the study. He never locked it. I'd never had a reason to snoop before, but now? Everything felt like a lie, and I wasn't waiting for answers anymore. I opened the laptop. And what I found wasn't his usual tabs. It was a file. A single PDF, titled Disappearance Legal Documentation. My blood ran cold. Emily's initials. I opened it. And the first line read, "This agreement confirms the legal arrangement for the disappearance and identity suppression of Emily Hartley, dated September 14, 2016. What the hell had Tyler done? I stared at the screen, not blinking. That document, it wasn't something random. It was legal. Official looking. There were signatures at the bottom. Tyler's was one of them. And Emily's. I scrolled back up and started reading from the beginning. It was like a contract, but not one you'd find in any normal situation. It talked about voluntary disappearance, identity concealment, and even a non-disclosure clause. It was all phrased in this cold, calculated legalese, but the meaning was crystal clear. Tyler had helped his sister disappear. Worse, he'd arranged it. I started shaking. There were multiple references to a third party, a guardian facilitator. That's how they referred to him. And then I saw the name, Daniel Mercer. The same man who had just shown up at our door. My stomach dropped. This wasn't some casual runaway situation. Emily had signed a contract to disappear, and Tyler had helped orchestrate it. Daniel Mercer had been part of the deal, whatever that meant. This wasn't just strange, it was criminal. I clicked through the pages until I found a section labeled, Terms of Breach. If Emily reappeared in public or contacted anyone connected to her former life, like Tyler, it would trigger an investigation and recovery protocol. The wording was vague, but it sounded like a threat. I didn't know if this was some underground program, a private security firm, or something even more illegal, but the tone was clear. Emily wasn't supposed to come back. Ever. That's when I heard it. A soft click from the back door. I froze. We never used that door. It led to the backyard and the gate. I tiptoed into the hallway and peeked out the kitchen window. Emily was standing in the backyard. She looked terrified. Her clothes were still soaked, her hair wild, but her eyes were locked on the door like she needed me to open it now. I let her in without a word. She rushed inside, locked the door behind her, and turned to me. "You found it, didn't you?" she asked. I nodded slowly. She sat down at the kitchen table, completely defeated. I didn't die. Tyler helped fake everything. But I wasn't hiding from the world. I was hiding from Daniel. And that's when she told me something I'll never forget. Daniel isn't just some facilitator. He's our cousin. Emily didn't look up when she said it. She just kept her eyes on the table, hands clenched, like saying it out loud had triggered something dark she didn't want to touch again. I sat down slowly, the air in the kitchen thick enough to choke on. The storm outside had quieted, but it felt like the real one had just begun in here. I asked her what she meant, how Daniel could be her cousin and also the man behind this twisted agreement. And she finally looked at me, her face hollow. "He was always in our lives, but no one really noticed him," she said. "You know the kind of person who blends into the background? Always quiet. Always helpful. That was Daniel. Everyone trusted him." She told me that after their parents died in a car crash when she was 19, Daniel became more involved. Not legally, but emotionally. He offered Tyler a place to stay for a while. Helped Emily with paperwork. Stepped into their lives just enough to seem useful, but not enough to raise alarms. Then things started to change. Emily said he began isolating her. Quietly. Subtly. She didn't even realize what was happening at first. He'd convince her not to go out. Told her she was unsafe, that people were watching her, and that he was the only one who could protect her. He'd say things like, "There are people who want to hurt you because of your parents," or "If you go to the police, they'll take you too." It was slow, manipulative, textbook psychological control. Tyler didn't see it, not at first. Emily said he was too focused on work, on building a life after the loss of their parents. Daniel filled the gaps in their broken family. Until one day, he presented them with a solution. He told them Emily was in danger. From who? He never said. He convinced them that the only way to keep her safe was to disappear. Tyler believed him. He didn't question the fear. He signed the documents. Helped her transfer some money into a hidden account. They staged her accident by crashing her old car near a ravine. No body, no recovery, just a totaled vehicle and a lot of assumptions. Emily went off-grid. Daniel moved her between houses for almost a year before settling her in some small town 2 states away under a fake name. He made all the rules. She couldn't contact anyone. Couldn't use social media. Couldn't go outside after dark. For years, she lived like a ghost. And last month, she ran. She said something finally snapped in her. She woke up one morning and realized she couldn't even remember what her real voice sounded like. Daniel had taken everything, her name, her freedom, her life. So she slipped away in the middle of the night. No phone, no plan. Just ran. She came here because Tyler was the only person who had ever tried to protect her before it all spiraled. But the second he saw her, he left. "He's afraid of Daniel," she whispered. "And maybe he should be." I asked her if Daniel ever hurt her. She didn't answer. But the silence said enough. Then her voice cracked, "You're in danger now, too." And that's when the power went out. The lights snapped off with a loud click, and the entire house dropped into darkness. No hum of the refrigerator. No soft buzz of the hallway light. Just silence, and rain hitting the windows. My body reacted before my brain could. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and aimed it at Emily. She was frozen, her eyes wide with panic. "Do you have a basement?" she whispered. I nodded. It was small, mostly used for storage, but I knew what she meant. Not shelter. Hiding. We moved fast. Down the stairs, the beam from my phone barely enough to see. Emily's breath was shallow, like she was trying to shrink herself into nothing. We tucked behind a stack of boxes in the corner, surrounded by old paint cans and a broken vacuum. That's when I heard it. The creak of the back door. Not the front, the back. The one Emily had used earlier. The one we thought was locked. I turned off my flashlight. The basement filled with a terrifying quiet. My ears strained for every sound above us. One step. Then another. Someone was in the house. Emily reached out in the dark and clutched my arm. Her grip was like iron. We waited. I don't know how long we sat there. Maybe 5 minutes. Maybe 15. But I heard the faint scrape of a chair in the kitchen. A soft thump. Then, footsteps down the hall. Whoever was upstairs wasn't in a rush. They were looking for something. And they weren't trying to be quiet about it. At some point, I pulled up the basement security camera on my phone. It was still connected to the Wi-Fi, thank God that hadn't gone down with the power. The feed was dark, but I could just make out the blurry shape of someone moving in the kitchen. A figure. Male. Tall. Hoodie. Daniel. It had to be. Then my phone buzzed in my hand. A text, from Tyler. "Do not call the police. I'm coming home. Don't do anything stupid." I stared at the screen like it was in another language. Don't call the police? He still hadn't explained anything, hadn't responded to my messages, and now he wanted me to sit quietly while this nightmare played out? Emily leaned over and saw the screen. Her voice was barely a breath. "He's protecting Daniel. He always has." Then came the sound that turned my blood to ice. The basement door opened. And someone started walking down the stairs. Each creak of the steps echoed through the basement like a countdown. My breath felt trapped in my chest. Emily's hand was still locked around my wrist, trembling. I counted each step. 1, 2, 3. Whoever it was, they weren't rushing. They knew we were here. I didn't dare move. We were pressed so tightly behind the storage boxes that dust was clogging my throat. My phone was still in my hand, flashlight off, screen dim. But the security feed was open, and I could see him now. Daniel. He was halfway down the stairs, moving slow and steady. No flashlight, no calling out names. Just silence. That silence was somehow worse than if he had screamed. Then he stopped. Right in the middle of the staircase. Like he was listening. Emily's grip tightened. He stayed there for what felt like forever. Then, like he changed his mind, he turned around. I heard the door creak shut. The click of the lock. Then, nothing. We didn't move. Not for 5 minutes. Not for 10. We just sat there, waiting for footsteps, voices, anything. But it stayed quiet. Completely, unbearably quiet. I checked the feed again. The kitchen was empty. Daniel was gone. I slowly reached for Emily's hand and whispered that we needed to get out. Now. We didn't know how long he'd be gone. Or if he was really gone at all. Maybe he was waiting for us to come up, to panic and give ourselves away. But sitting down there wasn't an option anymore. We crept up the stairs like ghosts. The living room was dark, but undisturbed. I peeked out the front window. The street was empty. No sign of Daniel. I double-checked the locks on every door, every window. Then we slipped into my car. I didn't even grab my purse. Just my keys. Emily crouched in the passenger seat, ducking below the window. I drove without turning on the headlights until we got out of the neighborhood. I didn't stop until we were parked outside a 24-hour diner on the edge of town. Only then did we breathe. And that's when my phone lit up again. Tyler. Where are you? I didn't respond. 5 minutes later, another text. Daniel told me everything. You don't understand what's happening. Then. If you don't bring her back, someone else will. Emily looked over and said something I still don't understand. He doesn't mean Daniel. She was shaking her head, eyes fixed on the screen. There's another person in all this. And if they know I'm alive, Tyler's not the only one in danger. We sat in that diner booth under the glow of buzzing fluorescent lights, our hands wrapped around cups of coffee we weren't drinking. Emily was still trembling, but it wasn't from the cold anymore, it was from memory. From fear. From something I could feel pressing against the air between us, but couldn't name yet. I finally asked her what she meant about another person. She reached into her jacket and pulled out a folded envelope. It was soft at the edges, like it had been handled too many times. Inside were photos. Not digital, printed. Taken with some kind of old camera. Grainy, dimly lit. In every one of them, Emily was present, but never alone. There was a man. Tall, wearing sunglasses, always a few steps behind. On a bench. Leaning against a post. Walking out of a store. Always near, never quite looking at the camera. Some photos had timestamps, months apart. Years, even. She said, I started noticing him in the background of my life about 2 years ago. Different towns. Different states. He's always there. Always watching. I flipped through the photos, my skin crawling. Daniel? I asked. She shook her head. No. Worse. Daniel called him the architect. Said he was the one who made all the arrangements. The fake death, the documents, the relocations. He's the reason I disappeared in the first place. Not because I was in danger, but because he wanted me to disappear. I stared at her. None of it made sense. Then she said something I'll never forget. Tyler was never trying to protect me. He was trying to protect the lie. He never told me what the architect wanted. Just that I had to vanish. That's why I came back. Because I finally realized. I was never the one in danger. She leaned in closer, her voice a whisper now. It's not about me anymore. It's about you. The second I walked through your front door, you became part of it. You're not safe now either. That's when my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. I answered. A low, calm voice on the other end said, You've seen too much. Bring her back. Or we come to you. And then it hung up. I stared at my phone, heart pounding so hard I couldn't hear the sounds of the diner anymore. The call had lasted 6 seconds, but the weight of that voice, cold, deliberate, knowing, left my hands shaking. Emily didn't ask what the voice said. She already knew. We left the diner immediately. I drove in silence, half expecting a black SUV to tail us, half expecting my brakes to fail. Every shadow outside the car felt like it was watching us. Every stoplight made my nerves unravel a little more. We ended up at a rundown motel 2 towns over. I paid cash. No names. Emily stayed low in the back seat until we were in the room, curtains drawn tight. It was almost 2 a.m. That's when she dropped the final bomb. The architect was part of a program, she said. Not government. Not exactly. More like private, outsourced. Experimental. They used people like me. Ones with no family left. No noise if we disappeared. I asked her what kind of program. She hesitated. Then she told me what she'd never told Tyler. It wasn't about protection. It was about testing. They used her identity. They scrubbed her digital footprint, wiped her credit, her records, her school history. She became a ghost. And they monitored her, to see how long she could live without resurfacing, without being tracked. But it wasn't a security exercise. It was surveillance. Behavioral mapping. Control. They tested psychological limits, gave her fake identities, planted threats. And Daniel? He wasn't her guardian. He was the handler. He wasn't supposed to care, she said quietly. But I think he did. Just enough to let me slip. That's why he came to the house. Not to bring me back. To warn me. I wanted to tell her it sounded insane. Like some tinfoil hat theory. But I'd seen the document. I'd heard the voice. And I had no idea how deep Tyler was in. Then, as if summoned, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a video. No sender. It loaded slowly. The thumbnail was dark. I hit play. The first few seconds were black. Then, movement. The camera tilted. It was our house. Our living room. And in the middle of the screen, standing completely still, was Tyler. He was holding something. It took a second to make it out. A photo of me and Emily, from earlier tonight, in the diner booth. The camera panned closer. A voice, his voice, said, "She ruined everything. You were supposed to stay gone." And then Tyler looked right at the camera. Like he knew I was watching. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. I just sat there in that motel bed with the phone in my lap, the final frame of the video frozen on Tyler's face. Not angry. Not afraid. Just blank. Like a man who'd already accepted what had to be done. Emily stood across the room, watching me carefully. "He sent it," I said quietly. "He knew I'd see it. He wanted me to." She didn't respond. Just sat down beside me, slowly, like her legs had forgotten how to hold her up. We didn't sleep. When morning came, we were still sitting in silence when someone slid a note under the motel door. No knock. No footsteps. Just a folded piece of paper on cheap carpet. Emily picked it up. Her hands were steady now, like her fear had hardened into something else. She unfolded it, scanned it, then passed it to me. It said, "We'll stop. No more visits. No more messages. But you have to walk away. No police. No news. You'll never see him again, and that's the deal." And below it, a final sentence, in handwriting I knew too well. "Please let this be the end. T." I felt something crack inside me. This wasn't Tyler trying to fix anything. This wasn't even an apology. It was a final chess move. A trade. Me, for silence. Him, for erasure. Whatever he'd gotten involved in, whatever they were doing, he was choosing it over everything. Over me. Emily stood and said she was leaving. She didn't ask me to come. Didn't say where. She just said she'd already run once. She could do it again. And then she looked at me with something close to gratitude. "You gave me more time than anyone else ever did," she said. That was the last thing she said before she walked out of the room. I waited another 2 hours. Then I drove home. The house was empty. No Tyler. No messages. No signs of anyone. His clothes were gone. His laptop. Everything. It was like he'd been scrubbed out of the space, like he was never there at all. But on the kitchen table, under my coffee mug, was one last photograph. It was a picture of me, sleeping on the couch, taken from the hallway. The timestamp was from last week. He'd been watching us long before any of this started. I moved out the next day. New apartment. New locks. No forwarding address. I never saw Emily again. Never heard from Tyler. And I've never told this story to anyone until now. But I think about it sometimes, what it means to disappear. How easy it is to erase someone. How silence is sometimes the only thing people leave behind. And sometimes, late at night, I swear I hear a knock at the door. But I never open it. Not anymore.